But in Port Charles, an empty castle is never truly empty. What if this moment becomes the beginning of something much bigger? What if the biggest secret isn't who left Windemere, but who never actually died? We have been led to believe that Marco Rios met a grim end at the hands of Ross Cullum, a tragedy that shattered Lucas Jones and set off a chain reaction of revenge and chaos. But what if the walls of Windemere are currently hiding a heartbeat that everyone assumes stopped long ago? Let us look at the current board very quickly. Jens Sidwell has been taken down, and his sprawling criminal influence is temporarily paralyzed. Windemere, the Gothic fortress that has hosted countless kidnappings, hostage situations, and dark Cassadine experiments, is practically a ghost town right now. Meanwhile, we have Lucas Jones and Britt Westbourne, two characters currently adrift in the aftermath of the recent chaos. Lucas is reeling from the supposed death of Marco and the trauma of the Windemere hostage rescue mission. Britt, having just been cleared of her devastating Huntington's disease diagnosis and freed from her legal nightmare, is also looking for a fresh start. Both of them are currently facing a housing crisis. Britt is likely feeling the mounting tension of living above Bobby's, especially with the lingering friction involving Carly Spencer. Lucas, too, is without a permanent anchor. The latest whispers suggest that Lucas and Britt might actually consider moving back into Windemere. On the surface, this makes absolutely no sense. Why would either of them voluntarily return to a place steeped in so much trauma, betrayal, and violence? They only use it as a chessboard right now, a temporary roof over their heads. But that is exactly where the illusion begins. This could lead to our first major future scenario, and it is a path that redefines everything we know about Lucas Jones. If you look closely at the logistics, Lucas agreeing to stay at Windemere previously, even under Sidwell's shadow, felt slightly out of character, unless he had a hidden motive. The story could be heading toward the massive revelation that Marco Rios is not dead. Instead, he is clinging to life in one of Windemere's notorious secret rooms, and Lucas has been hiding him there the entire time. Think about the layout of that castle. It is a labyrinth of forgotten corridors, subterranean dungeons, and hidden chambers that even the authorities cannot fully map. If there is anywhere on Earth you could hide a critically injured patient for months on end, it is Windemere. In this future, Lucas discovered Marco barely alive after Ross Cullum's brutal attack. Knowing that Jens Sidwell's orbit is incredibly dangerous and that Marco would be finished off if anyone knew he survived, Lucas made the desperate decision to pull him into the shadows. But Lucas cannot do this alone, which perfectly explains Britt Westbourne's sudden gravitational pull back to Spoon Island. Britt is a brilliant doctor, and Lucas has extensive medical expertise. Together, they form a clandestine medical team. In this scenario, they aren't moving into Windemere to share a living space. They are moving in to run a secret underground intensive care unit. Who benefits from this? Marco, obviously, gets a fighting chance at survival, shielded from the WSB, Ross Cullum's lingering operatives, and even his own dangerous father. But who is in danger? Lucas and Britt are placing massive targets on their own backs. Stealing medical supplies, running IV lines in a dusty catacomb, and lying to the entire town, including Sonny Corinthos and Laura Collins, requires a level of deception that could easily get them killed. If this happens, the dynamic between Lucas and Britt will shift into a high-stakes thriller as they fight every single day to keep a ghost tethered to the living world. However, we must also consider a second, completely different future. What if Marco's survival does not remain a quiet medical drama, but instead triggers a violent siege on Spoon Island? This is not just a minor variation. This is a scenario that changes the entire board. In this future, Marco finally wakes up, but his awakening triggers a failsafe. Perhaps Marco has a tracker embedded by the WSB, or perhaps Ross Cullum's remaining loyalists have been monitoring Windemere's power grid and noticed the medical equipment drawing electricity. The bigger consequence may be that Jen Sidwell, even from behind bars, realizes his son is alive and sends a heavily armed extraction team to rescue Marco from Lucas. Suddenly, Windemere is locked down. Lucas and Britt are no longer just doctors. They are defenders of a fortress under siege. Looking ahead, this second path turns the story into a claustrophobic game of cat and mouse. Britt, utilizing her deep knowledge of the Cassadine secret passages, would have to navigate the dark tunnels to evade heavily armed mercenaries, all while Lucas tries to keep a fragile Marco stable. This future completely alters the trajectory of their characters. Lucas would be pushed to his absolute physical and moral limits, forced to take up arms to protect the man he loves. It would also force the rest of Port Charles, specifically Sonny Corinthos, who believes Cullum killed Marco, and Jason Morgan to stage a massive militaristic intervention on the island. The fallout of a full-scale war at Windemere would completely dismantle the current power structure of the town, leaving the WSB exposed and forcing Sonny to reevaluate his entire security apparatus. Then there is the third future. This is the most unexpected path, the one that very few people are anticipating, but it is undeniably fascinating. What if Marco Rios is not the innocent victim we all assume him to be? What if Marco orchestrated his own near-death experience in collusion with Ross Cullum? There is a chance that Marco was never a pawn, but a deeply embedded player in the cold fusion and blackmail ring. In this dark, twisted future, Lucas has spent months exhausting himself, risking his freedom and his life to save a man who is actually a monster. As Marco slowly regains his strength in the secret room, Lucas and Britt begin to notice inconsistencies in his story. They find encrypted burner phones hidden in Marco's personal effects. They realize that Marco isn't hiding from Jen Sidwell. He is waiting for the perfect moment to usurp his father's criminal empire. If that happens, the psychological horror for Lucas would be unimaginable. He would be trapped on an isolated island, completely cut off from his family, sharing a secret room with a man he loves but no longer recognizes. Britt would likely be the first to piece the puzzle together, leading to a terrifying dynamic where she and Lucas must figure out how to neutralize Marco before he fully recovers and eliminates them to protect his own secrets. This path doesn't just change the board, it flips the board upside down, turning a story of romantic devotion into a chilling tale of betrayal and survival. It would fundamentally break Lucas's trust in people and push Britt into a position where she might have to make a lethal medical decision to save their own lives. If you ask me, looking at all these possibilities, the path that feels most likely and honestly the most emotionally satisfying is the first future. I keep coming back to the idea that Lucas Jones has always been the moral compass, the good guy who plays by the rules. Seeing him pushed to do something incredibly reckless, illegal, and dangerous purely out of profound love for Marco is a brilliant character evolution. It makes perfect sense that he would leverage Windemere's dark history for a noble cause. The castle has always been a place of captivity and torture, but Lucas and Britt repurposing its hidden dungeons into a sanctuary for healing is a beautiful, poetic irony. It also perfectly utilizes Britt's newfound lease on life. Having just escaped the death sentence of Huntington's disease, Britt dedicating her every waking moment to pulling someone else back from the brink of death is exactly the kind of redemption arc her character thrives on. I truly believe that they are hiding Marco, and that the tension of keeping this secret will be the driving force of their storyline for the next several months. But we cannot stop there. The story continues to expand. If this scenario plays out, what happens next may be the most explosive moment of the year. Imagine the scene when the secret can no longer be contained. What happens when Marco Rios is finally strong enough to walk out of the shadows? The next shockwave will not just be about his survival, it will be about the intelligence he brings with him. Marco will emerge as the ultimate living witness. He knows exactly what Ross Cullum did. He knows the intimate, dirty details of Jen Sidwell's operations. When Marco steps into the light, perhaps walking right into the Metro Court dining room during a major public event, the ripple effect will shatter Port Charles. Sonny Corinthos, who has been operating under the assumption that Cullum was the sole murderer, will realize he only had half the puzzle. The WSB, including Director Z, will scramble to contain the massive intelligence leak that Marco represents. Furthermore, the legal ramifications for Lucas and Britt will be staggering. They will have harbored a fugitive falsified medical records, and obstructed justice on a federal level. Will they be hailed as heroes for saving a life, or will they be prosecuted by ADA, Justine Turner, for their deception? The future of Port Charles is sitting in a dark, cold room in Windemere right now, attached to an IV drip, just waiting to open its eyes. The consequences of that awakening will reshape alliances, destroy careers, and ignite a brand new war. We are just waiting for the first heartbeat to register on the monitor.
Goodbye. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the GH Spoilers Daily channel.